Hi, welcome to the Snowflake Seattle user group. Our session tonight is on Coalesce.io. Joining us this evening to give us the demo is Alex Woodcock from Coalesce.
Cool. Thanks, Angela. And hello, everybody. Alex Woodcock here. I work in partner engineering here at Coalesce. I've been with Coalesce about a year and a half or so, but prior to that, I used to work with Snowflake. And so I did about 4 years at Snowflake in the sales engineering realm there. I'm based in Seattle, so worked with a lot of Seattle-based companies to stand up their Snowflake instances and grow their Snowflake presence. So very familiar with the platform. Still love working with the platform, and Coalesce is a great way to turbocharge your productivity on top of Snowflake. So I'm going to walk through a presentation of Coalesce. We'll talk about some of the selling points of Coalesce. We'll talk about some of the technical underpinnings of Coalesce, and then we'll give you a quick demo of the Transform platform. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Everybody see my screen all right there? My mouse moving in the upper left.
Yep, looks good.
Perfect. Cool. So please feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. We will do some open Q&A at the end here as well. But if you have something that you want to address during the course of the presentation, feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'm sure Angela can pause me and we can
Mhm.
address it in turn here. So first things first is that Coalesce is the T in the ELT pipeline, right? So there are a lot of tools that have sprung up in the Snowflake ecosystem. You have extract and load type scenarios, things like Fivetran or Airbyte or Estuary or Rivery, right? That have automated this process of getting data from on-prem sources into Snowflake or into the cloud so Snowflake could ingest it. You even have downstream use cases from BI and analytics and data science tools like Dataiku or Tableau or Power BI or Sigma or any of those tools that you may use in your organizations today. A lot of these have natural language processing or natural language generation, even, but automating that use case of being able to grab data from Snowflake, use whatever compute resources necessary, and have all of your downstream consumers have this automated and interoperable experience. At Coalesce, we see that the transformations in this middle part has been the last part of this whole data lifecycle to evolve. And so this GIF that keeps replaying here, we are seeking to automate that data transformation portion. So what do I mean by that? Well, there are a bunch of different ways that you can get data or transform data once it has landed inside of Snowflake. So you think of things like that maybe you're building your data lake or you're building a data warehouse inside of Snowflake. The status quo for years and years and years has been to code by hand. And I'm sure a lot of people have done this before. You log into a Snowflake instance, you maybe have some data that's been loaded. You open up a Snowsite worksheet and you start writing code. Create database, create schema, create table, insert into table, create procedure, and then I'm going to call this stored proc at many different points in a pipeline. While that is, a low barrier to like a low commercial barrier to getting started inside of Snowflake, fundamentally this has issues, right? Number one is that humans can be error prone. How many times have you written a query that you fat fingered something or had an error and Snowflake told you, hey, you need to go and fix this on line 10? But you're also creating a lot of sprawl in the organization because everybody writes code a little bit differently, right? There's more than one way to write a sprock. There's more than one way to insert into a table. There's all these different flavors of how people write code, and that standardization can become really, really cumbersome at scale. So you'll see also that you have get a little feedback. I don't know if someone
Yeah,
has
could
something to.
everyone go on mute, Elaine? Thank-
Somebody who's like an arch conservative
Hey,
in
Richard, can you
Canada
go on?
government
Richard, can you go on mute?
is totally supporting the Liberal Prime Minister. Wow. We all work
Richard?
together to come up
Sorry.
with new ideas.
I think,
Uh,
hey, Angela, maybe
But
you have host
fucking us
privileges and you can
everything.
mute Elaine's mic.
yeah, let me see if.
It's gonna hurt all those businesses that have good relationships with Canada all these years, just because of one person or one administration.
You have that, Angela?
Oh, let's see.
Should just be on the blue ellipse
Like, I
on
know the power company,
the
the
profile
power
picture.
secretary, he said,
Oh,
I told him flat out, Are you out of your mind?
Let's see. Sorry about this.
Everything is doing
If you hover your mouse over the profile
me-
picture, you should see the dot, dot, dot. Click on that and you should have the option to mute them.
Make America great.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. There we go.
Perfect.
All
Thanks,
right,
Angela.
sorry. Mm-hmm.
And so like I was saying, a lot of people will start with this status quo or getting started in Snowflake by writing code by hand, but fundamentally this can be difficult to manage at scale because not everybody does it the same. You'll see at the top, there's DBT. Maybe you'll see them next month at this user group. But DBT has revolutionized the data engineering realm in applying a lot of software engineering best practices to the data engineering realm. And fundamentally, it has revolutionized that and brought a lot of thought leadership to the data engineering space. But the underlying a catch here being you still got to write a whole bunch of code and you still got to fit all these things together, right? So it's a nice way to organize all of your code, and it's a nice way to um, to engineer for a modern data platform. But fundamentally, there's a high barrier to entry, and if you're not comfortable writing all that code by hand and maintaining it at large scales, it can break down in those scenarios. You do have the traditional GUI tools, and so I think of this like Informatica, Talend, Warescape, Boomi, Ab Initio, things of that nature that have a low barrier to entry and are easy to use. But fundamentally, these will have corners to their functionality, right? You'll find the corners of that pretty quickly. And so enter Coalesce, and we've built a nice graphic here to show that it's a nice organized flow of this DAG, but really we're sitting at the intersection of that ease of use and extensibility of code for data engineering projects. So we're trying to blend these two approaches and really give full control to the end user over that user experience that they have inside of Coalesce and ultimately inside of Snowflake. So this is the big idea that comes out of that the outputs of all of these tools are fundamentally the same. These are tables and views and jobs and orchestration and maybe dynamic tables or Cortex functions or whatever that fun functionality is inside of Snowflake. Any of these tools can do those things. And so that is not a unique differentiator in a transform tool itself. So the journey or the user experience of how they get there is really the fundamental difference in how you do that in Coalesce. And so I've just highlighted a couple pieces of this here where really we're trying to be at the intersection of ease of use with this GUI and a code first automation solution where you're templatizing and building all these patterns inside of Coalesce that you can then reuse for work later on. So who uses Coalesce? Well, fundamentally, this is engineers, so technical people. You could think of data architects, data engineers, analytics engineers, and they are the power user of the Coalesce Transform platform. You may have downstream users who are actually consuming from these pipelines and building dashboards or building analyses and notebooks from that. You also have IT business stakeholders who are driving the project, right, signing the checks and are technically involved and responsible for the outcome, the business outcome of a implementation. Okay, so there are 3 points upon which we sell the Coalesce Transform platform. Number one is productivity. So automate code, put the right tool in the right person's hands, and how do you make one person look like 2 or 3 or 4 people, right? Because you're working at orders of magnitude faster on top of Snowflake. The second is change management. This is again where if you have a whole bunch of spaghetti code that has kind of spiraled out of control, it can be tough to make a simple change to a pipeline. So everyone knows this story where the business comes back to you and says, hey, I need an extra calculation or I need a different data type here, right? And you maybe have to parse through hundreds or thousands of lines of code and fix this in 6 or 8 different places. It can really become a hassle to maintain all that. So think of this as like clearing out the queue of all of those business requests and having a visual interface for making those changes. The last piece here is built for the whole data team. Like I said, this is for engineers, this is for analysts, this is for architects, this is for even the business stakeholders. But the extensibility of Coalesce underneath the hood is really where a lot of people who come from a code heavy background feel welcomed in Coalesce. So like I said, you're going to be able to use regular tables and views and stages and things like that, but you're also going to be able to adapt Coalesce to use things like dynamic tables or incremental loading patterns or Cortex functions or Iceberg nodes or things like that. And so all of that extensibility exists inside of Coalesce, and we built those templates for our community to use and build pipelines. Okay, let's get into the demo here. Actually, I have one thing that I want to show here prior to the demo is just a little bit of the architecture. What you see here is that Coalesce is a SaaS platform that sits next to Snowflake. It's a developer productivity tool on top of Snowflake, but the customer is hosting their own Git repo. Okay, this is really important that this is one of the software engineering best practices that DBT has really revolutionized in the data engineering realm in saving your code, versioning your code, branching your code, and being able to work collaboratively on data pipelines. So Coalesce has adopted that as well in part of our architecture. So everything that you see me doing, I could take these points and commit them to Git and then deploy them to other higher environments inside my Snowflake account. So I just like to show that up front that there are working pieces to this whole equation. You don't just get Coalesce, you do need GitHub or Azure DevOps Git or GitLab or Bitbucket as well. But all of these together build this great kind of nirvana of data engineering. So let's go ahead and get started. This is Coalesce. Okay, so again, SaaS platform, nothing to download, install, upgrade, maintain, anything like that. And what you see on my screen here are projects. Each of those projects is tied to a Git repo. In my case, I'm using a GitHub backend, but again, you can use any flavor of that code repository of your choice. And each of these projects is housing a bunch of workspaces. And a workspace is that visual environment where you develop your pipeline. So a lot of people like to think of developing your pipeline and automating all the code generation underneath. You visually design a pipeline that generates code. Each of these is tied to a Git branch. So you can see demo branch, restore, demo branching, Cortex. I have a bunch of different demo areas here, but traditionally this might be my main branch, and this might be developer 1 and developer 2 and developer 3, right? They will have different branches that they're working on or different features that they're working on that they would then merge back into their main branch. Okay, so from a DevOps perspective, you'll have a single project and repository and all of these different developers working in their own workspaces. A workspace could even restore from a commit or branch and kind of start from the work that some other developer has already begun. So what does this look like? Well, here today I'm going to use this even tastier bite branch. I like to give cheeky names to my Git branches here. And I'll show a couple things that we configure up front in Coalesce. So number one in my workspace, you can see I'm hooked into my Snowflake account. There's that URL, and I'm using my user credentials. I'm using Snowflake OAuth. This does work with key pair authentication or username password if you like, but I've just used OAuth to start here. And then my storage mappings are mapping to these dev areas of my Snowflake account. Okay, so these are already created and landing data in Snowflake. You could imagine, again, maybe Fivetran or Estuary or Rivery is landing data into here. This is where I'm going to pull from. Now, later on, if I'm promoting content, this may go from dev to QA or dev to prod or something like that, right? But you'll be promoting content through different parts of your Snowflake account. So that's all the setup you have to do to get this started. I guess I've also kind of glossed over creating that Git integration, but that is part of my account, and I'm using that Git integration to commit as I'm going along here. So what's it look like? Well, we'll launch the workspace. A couple different things that you'll see here, a whole bunch of widgets around, but I have this nice canvas to start authoring my beautiful data pipeline. And so in order to start transforming data in here, all I got to do is point and click. So I will add a node, and here I'm going to start with a stage node. So my customer loyalty, this will give it a certain naming convention. Maybe I want to add a description to this object and generate it with AI. There's a couple new AI functionalities inside of Coalesce, so I'll go ahead and highlight a couple of those. I might say, okay, my first name column, I'm going to want to upper transform this. So you can see you get the nice autocomplete functionality. and there I've just authored my first transform inside of Coalesce. I'll change it to a string data type, and we'll take a look at all of these options along the right-hand side. This is also going to inform how that query gets templatized and generated for me. The short story here is that all of this is customizable. We'll come back to that and talk about it in more depth, but I don't have to change anything this time. So this is basically this grid that you're looking at. Think of this like your select statement, and then this join tab like your from statement. So anybody who's written long form SQL, you're familiar with that. I could flip over to here and I could write any, a where clause, a group by clause, a window rank, or something like that if I wanted to in this join tab. But for now, I'm just going to use this transform. Now, say that I wanted to do this same upper transform for all of these columns at once. And if I was using hand coding, or if I was using something like dbt, I would go and make sure that all my arguments are in the right place, and I would make sure I have the right number of parentheses, and I would make sure I have the right number of commas happening in my transforms. Well, here in Coalesce, I'm just going to use this upper transform. I'm going to use this little token that will resolve to all of these columns at once. So a nice kind of bulk edit functionality to be able to do that once in one shot. You can do this for any other attribute, so column name or source or a column description. Maybe I want to add AI descriptions here for these columns so that you're kind of documenting this throughout the course of your modeling. But the basics here are that you use this the mapping grid as your select statement, and then this create and run button are actually going to execute this on top of Snowflake. One thing I did not point out in this configuration, I just remembered, is that I'm using a Snowflake warehouse. Okay, so you can see by the name of this is an extra small warehouse, but none of this data is leaving the four walls of your Snowflake account. So we're leveraging all of the inbuilt security you may have, your masking policies, your access policies, whatever schemas I can read and write to, but nothing more than that. So I've created and run this. So I just generated a couple queries that happened on top of Snowflake. So first of all, I ran this create or replace table. This is my DDL statement. You can see even the comment here that I generated with AI. So I was able to run that statement. The second piece is that I ran this insert statement when I ran the query. So here's insert into, there's all the upper transforms that I had put in mass. This could be any SQL that you may have written here. It could be a case statement, could be a lower function, could be arithmetic that you're doing here or an aggregation. But all of this is templatized underneath the hood by a little bit of Jinja and that SQL. We'll take a look at that in just a second, but that's the power of kind of decoupling that DDL and DML without needing to run it all at once. In my dev environment, I know that my customer table is going to be a dimension attribute. So you can see this inherits my description. And the dimension template has a little bit of a different look to it. It has a surrogate key at the top and a few system columns at the bottom. And these options are a little bit different. So I might say, okay, well, I know that you can see the business keys required. We will add the customer ID. I don't know why that's cut off, but if I expand it, you can see that that's customer ID right there. And then change tracking below here. So for instance, say, anytime that my customer changes an email or phone number, I want to maintain a historical record of that customer. This is a classic type 2 solely changing dimension issue in data engineering. And if you've ever tried to solve this problem by writing code from scratch, it's not fun. So you have to have a historical record. Maybe Alex Woodcock moved and I need to expire that record. I don't want to double count Alex Woodcock in my downstream analytics, right? And write that record twice. So we've change tracked in this case on email and phone number. And again, we've executed this DDL create or replace table. You can see the surrogate key is using the identity function in order to increment that accordingly. But then this has generated a merge statement. So this is the merge, and this is the SQL that goes into writing a type 2 solely changing dimension inside of Snowflake. So again, I don't know if people have tried to write this from scratch. I would not want to have to. But this is the productivity factor of using Coalesce, is that you put this in the right person's hands and they now can do a type 2 solely change dimension in 10 seconds rather than needing to write this code over the course of, half a day or maybe a week, right? It just depends on your SQL skill level and being able to test and write that whole statement from soup to nuts. So it's a real big value add on that front. Now I might say I'll put a view on the end of this. This view is going to be where my, Tableau or Power BI or Sigma is going to hook in and start doing that customer analysis. And that's great. So maybe I would add a couple more of these. You can see I could do operations in bulk here. So this location and franchise are going to be type 1 dimensions. I do still have to specify my business key for these ones. And so I'll just do that one by one. But those are not going to have change tracking on them for location and franchise. So why do we show that? The reason is just to show this create all, run all. So super easy to run all of these in bulk as you design your pipelines and to track all of that traffic that's happening inside of Snowflake. So speaking of all of that query history, you could actually see all of that appearing inside my Snowflake account being generated by Coalesce. So all of this is pushed down, again, kind of using all of the best practice SQL that is templatized here. So you can see this one was the merge statement for that DIM customer again, and that's running here. Looks like it happened in 3 seconds and just happened a couple seconds ago. Cool. So now I would say, hey, well, I'm building a basic star schema. I have some dimension tables. It might be useful to have some numbers that I want to add up or aggregate in some way, shape, or form. We're going to join these two order tables together. Again, I'll kind of change the naming convention. I know I have a couple repeats in here, so I'm going to delete those columns. You can always feel free to delete columns, especially if you're going to write an aggregation inside of Coalesce. But here I want to show this from clause or this join tab. So I know that this joins together based on order ID, and we'll just input that. As long as that has run appropriately, we should get some results here where we run this and that's completed. Probably take a little bit longer than any of those dimension nodes that were just kind of basic selects. But that's the basics, right? This is a really useful interface for if you're joining together, 6, 8, 10 tables at once, and you want to generate that join clause. You can see this ref syntax that's very similar to DBT right here, but you could customize that join clause and kind of generate that join clause in and of itself. On top of that, we'd probably put a fact table, and a fact table on top of that, maybe we'd put a few. So again, kind of the basics here are just work faster, work smarter, and have Coalesce handle all of these best practice SQL generation and code generation under the hood. If you want to customize that code, we'll talk about that later on. But this is the speed that you get with building a basic data mart or building a basic star schema. We build all of these templates and you're kind of off to the races just from your raw data. So that stage orders is going to take a little bit longer, but I just wanted to show kind of the power, the productivity of using Coalesce here and moving through that build. So the second piece is to talk about scale and collaboration in the Coalesce platform. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat and we can talk about those in just a sec. I'm going to take a sip of water here. Okay, nothing so far. Hope I didn't lose anybody.
It's looking good. I appreciate you showing us some of the details in there. I'm keeping
Yeah.
my questions, but yeah, good stuff, Alex. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Angela. Okay, so for the scale portion, maybe we'll abbreviate this a little bit just because I want to get to extensibility and talking about some cool functionality inside of here. The scale portion, number one, I had alluded to this before, but you'll use this git modal in order to commit all of your work on an ongoing basis. Okay, so this gets pushed back into your Git repo. You can see you get a nice kind of diff checker. Looks like this raw location wasn't in there from my last commit. And this is all of the metadata that is associated with that given object. So this is what that looks like. These are the types of files that get committed there. And when you go to deploy to a higher environment, it pulls from that GitHub repository. So it's not necessarily what is on your screen at that given moment, but it's what has been committed from GitHub. I could also, commit or see the history of my commits here, force checkout, merge latest, whatever I need to do, resolve those merge conflicts, all of that in this interface right here. Now, that can be, again, useful from a collaboration perspective if other people want to check out my work and kind of start from building from here, or maybe I have an object that they want to reuse in some of their pipelines. That's how you'll use that Git functionality. Now, I did talk a little bit about making changes as well, and so the for instance here is, imagine that this was dozens of nodes or hundreds of nodes or even thousands of nodes here, and somebody comes back to me and says, "Hey, Alex, I need you to add a calculation on that customer view, and I want it to be for the full name of that customer rather than, splitting that out into two columns." So kind of a silly example, but the same logic applies here. If they wanted to add some logic or add a column to a table, in this example, I have to do this to these three objects. But imagine that it was, 25 steps of a data pipeline. So if I'm a good data engineer, I'll go back as close as I can to the source, and I'm going to say, hey, I want to add my full name column here. And so full name is going to be customer loyalty dot first name, and we'll use a space and customer loyalty dot last name. Okay, so hopefully we've got that right. We'll make this a string variable or a data type as well, and we'll create and run this. We'll get the nice little preview below, and we'll check that the calculation took here. So all the way over here, there's that full name calculation that I've just written. Now, at any point in a Coalesce pipeline, you can right-click and view column lineage. And so a lot of tools out there will tout that they have column level lineage, but it's can be tough to get to and tough to draw. I really like this view just because humans are visual creatures after all, right? And that's how we understand the world most intuitively. So first off, I could see my full name column. It comes from first name and last name on my source. So what is the impact of making a change to my source? If Fivetrain stops replicating this first and last name, what is going to happen to my full name column? I can tell quickly and easily from here in this visual menu. The second point here is making changes at scale. So I can see all these first and last names. These have that upper transform, but that full name, it only exists where I wrote that calculation right now, right? And if I had 25 steps here in a hand coding scenario again, I'm going to track down the right version of those scripts. I'm going to add that full name column. I'm going to make sure I didn't mess up my parentheses or my commas or whatever. And I'm going to execute that 25 times. Well, inside of Coalesce, we give you the ability to propagate an addition or a deletion. And so when I propagate that addition, this gives me this little checkbox on each of the downstream objects. And so I would check this and check this, check this, and I would say, okay, I'm ready to preview this and apply this. This will be just a warning that says, hey, Alex, you might want to check this into Git before you do this, but I'm living dangerously today. And so we will propagate that addition all the way down our data pipeline. Okay. And it doesn't matter how many objects you're doing this with. It doesn't matter, if you're adding or deleting this column. This is a metadata exercise and a metadata code that Coalesce can automate and generate for you. This process in a manual format probably takes you, several hours at best, and days at the worst. But we were able to do that in this visual interface, all by just propagating that addition or deletion. So again, in a small scenario like this, it doesn't look quite as impressive. But if you imagine a DAG that looks something like this, well, then you're propagating across hundreds or thousands of nodes and being able to view that column level lineage and propagate accordingly. So it's a really powerful solution to be able to understand your data, where it's coming from, and where you need to push that data accordingly. Maybe I chose the wrong time to load that up. Oh, there it goes. So again, kind of the visual representation of where it comes from, where you want to push it to, and doing that at scale with all of these different node types and objects. Okay. And this is a real life example, by the way, this retailer DAG. So this is a real life example of somebody using Coalesce to build soup to nuts for one of their use cases. So it's not just for simple star schema builds, it's for designing pipelines at scale. Okay, I do want to talk a little bit about the extensibility portion here and talk a little bit about the Copilot. So say that I didn't want to do this on my own, and I wanted to build something new here. Well, this handy dandy little Copilot node, I could open this up right here. And so I might say, hey, maybe I want to build a staging layer for truck, country, and menu here. Can you help me build a staging layer for truck, country, and menu? Something like that. So I know everybody's coming out with a Copilot these days, but the great part about this is being able to have a natural language conversation with your data and have kind of help along the way for building all of these nodes. So what we've done is just a basic kind of build a stage. I could do the same for help me join these tables together. I could do the same for build a fact node off of this or build a dimension node and make it an SCD2. All of that is possible with this Copilot. So this is going to give me a little synopsis of what it just did. The DAG looks a little funny here, but I can just draw this optimized graph, and there it is, right? There's all these staging nodes that I just created via the Copilot. Maybe I would say, if I have a DBT model, let's go ahead and grab this and say work orders, and I would say, build an offshoot of this pipeline with this SQL. I'll paste all that in there. It's probably going to think for a little while longer, but I'm hoping that it'll go to these raw tables and read all this SQL and build that for me in a visual manner.
Was that
So
just a single SQL query that you popped in there,
that,
or
yeah, I think it was a CTE.
okay.
Yeah, you
All
can
right,
see it's got
thanks.
a handful of subqueries going on here, and then we
Okay,
select star from it at the end.
thanks.
Um, but yeah, this is really the part of Coalesce that is starting to evolve as a migration mechanism for people who have maybe gone down the road of using DBT, or maybe they want to just pick up all this hand coding work and move forward with Coalesce. You just have to give it the instructions, and the Copilot can actually start to build you this from a visual component. And so again, it's gone through and read that SQL. Let's go ahead and draw that optimized graph. Here it is, right? Here's that work orders table that ended in. It added a date filter, null handling, NVL, and upper transformations. All of that functionality here has been done and built for me with the Copilot. So it works great for build new. It works great for migrations and existing SQL. As long as you have those sources in your canvas, the Coalesce Copilot can help get you going, really quickly inside of Snowflake. Um, Now, even further on that concept is the concept of extensibility inside of Coalesce. So we've talked about the productivity of working faster with Coalesce. We've talked about the scale of Coalesce and being able to handle all these change requests from the business and check it into Git and collaborate with your colleagues. But how do I change the code that's happening underneath here? This is kind of the crux of where a lot of DBT users will get hung up and say, well, I like the flexibility of all my code. I want to be able to customize that to my heart's content. The good news is that all of that is available in Coalesce as well. And so I'll show you here in the bottom left-hand corner, we have something called the build settings. And the build settings is local to your workspace, your dev environment where you're working right here. And there are a couple of ways that you can customize the underlying templates. The first way is through these node types. And so when I select my node types, here are all of the built-in default templates that you saw me using, a dimension, fact, stage, whatever, kind of a basic flush and fill table. But say, whoops, I didn't want to sort that. Um, Say, for instance, that dimension that had the SCD2 logic, you have a different way to implement that, and that's okay. So say you wanted to customize that, well, right here you can. And so we could either view this or duplicate it. I'm going to duplicate because this is one of the default templates. And here is all of that kind of configuration that I had alluded to earlier, right? That all of this is customizable. So we would say like this is dimension um, no pre-post, something like that. So at the end of this dimension, it looks like there's some pre-SQL and post-SQL if I wanted to, call some sprock at the end of this, right? Here I want to say dimension no pre-post for the actual title of this. Maybe I would even give it a different hex color to discern between this on this YAML configuration. But this should look pretty familiar, right? All of this YAML configuration is driving all of this visual component for the node template itself. And so if I want to get rid of my pre-post SQL, I'll just find that right here and I'll get rid of that. So there's that copy of dimension no pre-post. And now when I scroll down, that's all gone from this configuration. If I want to change the way this increments, maybe I want to say, here's that surrogate key. Maybe I want to get rid of that key from this system column, and I'll just get rid of that right here. Maybe that surrogate key, you'll see that reference later on with that identity keyword from the dimension template. And I want to get rid of that piece right here. Okay. All of this is customizable. So you see with this Jinja at the top for the create template, there's the actual SQL that we're kind of fitting with this template. So if I wanted to, I'd get rid of some of these pieces. If I want to customize what happens when I hit the run button, then I change that run template right here. So here's that set is type 2, and then you see that merge into using blah, 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 so on and so forth. So all of that logic and all of that productivity that we talked about that you gain by using the dimension template, all of that is customizable right here.
While you're
So
there, can you click the render button?
yeah, we'll click the render. Oh, I need to business key. Let's see if this works. Nice, it still worked. So it's using an explain plane here then and kind of like checking that this node is still valid. If I, misconfigured something and this YAML was off or the Jinja was off, I would get an error here. So let me see if I just like add another character. This should not be valid. Yeah, so it'll give me kind of the hint that, what I've done is not valid YAML here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the basics of doing this on your own. If you have a customer or you have your own standards that you want to enforce throughout the enterprise, this is really where a lot of people feel comfortable. Architects feel comfortable going in and creating these standard templates and then sharing them across the enterprise. So, if I now have this new dimension no pre-post node, here it is, and there's no pre-post options here on the bottom. So really easy to just customize a one-off node and to enforce your own standards in the enterprise. The second way that you can install or get these new templates is actually through the Coalesce marketplace. And so right here, I'm using packages. This one's called GE for Great Expectations. It's a testing utility that you can use to call for specific data quality tests. But I might say I want to browse here, and all of these packages in the marketplace have certified development paradigms for inside of Coalesce. Newell, I saw you put a hand up. Did you have a question there?
Yeah, just a quick question. On that segment you did before where you were doing you're altering that table, does
Yeah.
your Copilot actually give you advice on, maybe you should try a swap table instead or something like that, so that you could, retain the previous
Mhm.
table, alter the table, create that kind of thing. How sophisticated is that?
Yeah, the Copilot is version 1, so it's
Okay.
not as sophisticated enough to give you hints as to, how you should develop it. I could imagine a future where it does have that sophistication in there, but not in this first iteration. Um, I will say that there is a creator alter package, kind of in this package marketplace. So if you want to keep that thing in place rather than truncating and loading it again or something of that nature, that does exist as well as a development pattern.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Now, the second way that we can get a customized node here is in the Coalesce package marketplace. I kind of buried the lead a little bit, and we can you can get the create or alter package, you can get Cortex functions, you could get any of these scenarios. So you'll just look for the nice little snowflake logo, and we would say, okay, there's create or alter. Maybe today I want to grab my dynamic tables package. And so when we find out more, this is going to come with a very verbose documentation on how this actual package works. I'm going to grab my package ID, and you can, some nice light bedtime reading on how this actual node works. But all of that documentation will help you to understand how you should use it in your data pipelines. But I can now install that into my workspace. So I have Coalesce Snowflake Dynamic Tables. I'm going to use DTs as my package alias as how I'll refer to this. And then you'll see within my browser when I'm ready to utilize a dynamic table, when I want go to add a node, here's this DTs menu where I could add a dynamic table work node, a dynamic table dimension node, or latest record version. All of those again are documented in that package marketplace documentation. But for me to add this, I could do that right here. And I would say, hey, this is on top of my truck node. Maybe I would specify which warehouse I want to run this upon. Let's put this on my warehouse, and we'll run this every 60 minutes, say. Again, this is configurable right here. If I wanted to run it every, 24 hours or something like that. And what refresh mode you put it on, when you initialize it. These paradigms should all look familiar, right? And that's because that's the code that goes into creating a dynamic table itself. Do we copy grants, and are you using a distinct or group by all or a cluster key or what have you? So I'm just going to create it. You'll notice that the dynamic table doesn't have a run, and that's because this is actually being created on top of that. It only needs the create template because it'll refresh itself. But then this is the actual code that we have now executed on top of Snowflake. So create or replace dynamic table. You can see that I put the target lag for 24 hours. This could be downstream if you prefer, but there's that warehouse and a comment associated with that. So a lot of people, when dynamic tables were coming out, were like, hey, doesn't Coalesce hate those because it's such an easy data engineering thing to do? No, we love them. We want to help you manage dynamic tables and create dynamic tables in your pipelines. So super easy to create as long as you know the kind of underlying code and how you need to fit that together based on this little paradigm right here. I'm actually curious here if I could get this to create a dynamic table. So let's actually do this live. I want to see if I can get maybe this order header join together my order header and order detail information with a dynamic table work node. I haven't actually tested this, so we're doing it live and seeing if this works. But the point here is really that Coalesce is so easy for me to use and to fit together all these nice little Lego blocks to help me build a beautiful data engineering pipeline. And really that's it's easy to see that from a visual manner here. So yeah, it looks like it wanted to build this off of the migration piece that I did earlier. So I don't think it actually liked that. But if I had told this, hey, do this off of the raw source tables, maybe it would have worked. But I'm really just kind of making it up as we go here. I just wanted to see if that would take. So you get the idea though. This is how you're actually being able to go in here and use the extensible functions of Snowflake. Okay, and so that package marketplace has all sorts of functionalities that you may want to discover and read about and implement in your data pipelines. It has again kind of these featured ones at the top for Cortex dynamic tables and that test utility that I was talking about for that I said for grid expectations. Cool. In addition to that, I will say that there is also an Iceberg package that has a whole bunch more detail here on how those work and how they're defined. I actually went through and installed that Iceberg package in a different workspace, and followed along with this Snowflake tutorial on using Iceberg tables. So you do need to go into Snowflake and create an external volume. You need to kind of configure your S3 bucket and all of those pieces. So there's quite a bit of setup involved in doing that, but I'll show you very quickly here. There is an Snowflake Iceberg table node, and you'll see that the configuration on this one, it just has me do, you need the external volume name and the base location name of your S3 area in order to be able to create this. So if I were to kick this off, this be writing back to Snowflake as well as that S3 area to do so. So again, another piece of that marketplace, install it, play with it, and help this to kind of visually drive that productivity on top of Snowflake.
Just a
It's a lot easier than parsing through code. Go ahead, Angela.
just a quick note on the Iceberg nodes. One of the things we found out on that was the create creates it and the run populates the data. So I don't know if you're
Yeah,
familiar with those nuances, but that was just one of the things we found. So
yeah, great point. Cool. Well, I think that I will maybe I will do one more step here just to kind of show that flow of promotion. Let me get rid of these just to make sure that I promote this appropriately. So for the last piece of this, what I want to do is actually go through and promote this content from my dev environment into a higher environment inside of Snowflake. So I'm just going to use this new commit. I'll even use this kind of AI git commit, and we'll go ahead and commit and push this. So this is my latest commit. You can see refactored nodes and did a whole bunch of stuff. Once I've done this, I'm ready to promote this to a different environment. And so inside of my Coalesce workspace, you'll see it's attached to this QA environment and this prod environment. And the QA, like I mentioned, might have different storage mappings. So where is this going to push to? Here, it's going to pull from that raw area, but it's going to push to a Woodcock QA. Again, a different area of my Snowflake account that's already been created. And I'm going to select my QA. And let's go ahead and deploy this from the right branch. And there's that git commit message. It can take a little bit to generate this plan, but this is basically going to show you all of the SQL that Coalesce is about to write against Snowflake.
it's nice.
And
It
to look
shows
at
you
each one of
the
these
yeah, it
objects.
shows you the differences. So it'll kind of specify the different kinds of things that are getting deployed, and you can expand and look at the diffs and stuff. Some of it does no changes, but it will tell you that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
nice.
yeah. So we'll go ahead and deploy this one. And as long as there aren't any conflicts here, this will go out and start writing all of those queries. It does have this nice kind of troubleshooting interface. So in the case that anything has failed, I can go back and kind of fix that, recommit, and then go forward with whatever I need to. But you can see that this went through and deleted a bunch of stuff from my last commit, and then started creating all of these components. These are all the DDL components from that deploy. Now that that deploy is in a good state, I could go and I could actually run and refresh this pipeline. So the piece that you see below here, these are called job objects, and the job is a way to define smaller pieces of your DAG. Here I've actually used um, a syntax to select everything and then use this wildcard to refresh all of these dimensions at once. The fact table, again, can be done with everything upstream or downstream. You're probably familiar with this syntax, but being able to add a plus or and or ors or other keywords like that, and being able to kind of control at this granularity all of the pieces that flow into that object or are downstream of that object. So QA is in that good state for deploy, and I would say, hey, I want to refresh that fact table. I can run that job just on a one-off basis to run everything going into that fact table, or I could even put it on a schedule here and say, hey, run this once a day at 4 a.m. or something of that nature. So that orchestration piece is all built into Coalesce. However, we do expose API endpoints if you have an enterprise orchestration tool and you have some other needs for dependencies or want to hit this with something like an Airflow or a Dagster or Orchestra or something of that nature as well. But I just like to show it from here because it demos nicely. And once that refresh is done, we should see all of those tables get populated inside of Snowflake. So yeah,
And then would you
looks
show
like
us
we're doing all
docs
this.
too?
Yeah. Documentation is very verbose as well. Let's go to docs.coalesce. Oh, I guess we went to the marketplace here. Here's the API reference that I had just referenced here. So if you are wanting to start a run, this is the endpoint that a lot of folks will use when they're using an enterprise scheduler to do so. And then the docs as a whole are right here. You'll have, again, kind of verbose documentation on quick starts, fundamentals, using workspaces, promoting content to environments, customizing nodes, all of that stuff here, and even some quick start guides to get you going quickly and easily.
And then inside the tool, inside Coalesce, there's documentation. They can kind of look at like by a table
Oh,
view as
yeah,
well.
sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
the AP, clicks on the API. That was nice to see a
yeah.
couple things there too.
Yeah, absolutely. So to Angela's point, this docs tab that is at the top of here, this is automatically generated as you are building inside of Coalesce. So you can see my QA environment that we just deployed to. This is kind of some lightweight documentation on what is that object, what is the associated metadata with that, um, and kind of it gives you a basic kind of lineage diagram here as well. This is really useful for your analysts and data scientists and folks who are consuming the output of this pipeline. And we do not charge for access to these docs. So if someone is simply an environment reader and they're coming in here as a downstream consumer, they can use these docs for free. The licensing model is for everyone who's developing inside of Coalesce and kind of building what you saw me building today. But for readers and consumers, all of those folks can use that docs tab as well. That's pretty much all I wanted to show today from a demo standpoint. Again, this is a as a productivity tool on top of Snowflake or sort of a missing UI for Snowflake. It's a really great way to be productive on Snowflake. If you're just getting ready, or I'm sorry, if you're just getting started in your Snowflake journey, or if you're having trouble, being I imagine that folks here have plenty of experience in Snowflake and don't have trouble with that. But for people who want to move fast on Snowflake, deploy the pipelines quickly, and kind of employ a lot of those data engineering best practices, Coalesce is a great choice to do so. So,
Cool.
yeah, thanks for
Will
everything. I'm
yeah,
happy to take any questions that folks have.
and will you before we go into questions real quick, will you go out and show us upcoming Coalesce events so that
Yes.
before anybody kind of hops off?
Yes, thank you. So a
Sure.
couple things that are upcoming here. Looks like there's a hands-on lab tomorrow. Could be useful if you want to get hands-on with Coalesce. Go spin up a trial account and you can kind of try to follow along with the presenter tomorrow. We will also be at many of the Snowflake World Tour events. I know that those are primarily more internationally focused, but I believe there are a couple around the US as well. We also do the Snowflake Data for Breakfast tours every year. So I go to the Seattle one. We can shake hands and have a coffee. It would be super fun to meet everyone there. But these are kind of the on the website what we have upcoming here. Um, I believe that we have. Oh, there's the Snowflake World Tour stuff. So information on that and meeting up with sales counterparts or technical resources like myself who would be at those events.
Great, thanks. And then just one last to start off the questions, did you want to talk just a little bit about the catalog new
Sure.
changes you did? Thanks.
Sure. So everything that you just saw in that demo was the Coalesce Transform platform. And so Coalesce Transform is really how Coalesce came to market and built our business from zero to whatever amount. Um, but recently we acquired a catalog company. It was formerly called CasterDoc, and is now branded as the Coalesce Catalog. This is really for kind of more akin to those analyst and data science personas and being able to find what is in the organization. It is a separate platform or a separate tool. So I'll show that very quick here. You can see, oh, I need to sign back in. You can see one last relic of CasterDoc right here, but this is the Coalesce catalog. Um, Probably won't go through a full demo of this right now, but this is for the discoverability component of what is in your organization, what is built by Coalesce, what is built by DBT, what's in Snowflake, what's in S3, what is displayed in Tableau or Sigma or Power BI. All of that lineage component is built into here, as well as a whole bunch of nice metadata associated with given objects. So I'll just look for one called vSales, and we'll look over this real quickly. Kind of the table stakes of all of those columns. You can see this has an AI generated README, queries that are hitting this object on an ongoing basis, comments from everybody on the organization, history, so kind of a version control of this object, if that will load for me. And if not, that's okay. And some data quality tests that maybe have been implemented inside of Coalesce that are on this, and this object might be failing or passing or something like that. So here's that data quality. It might be failing something specific here. It's passing all these null tests, and that would be, you know, a green flag for this. But this catalog component, it is sold separately of Coalesce Transform. If your organization wants to buy both, we'll give you a great deal on it. But the point here is that Coalesce Transform for the data engineer, for the data architect, for the analytics engineer, the Coalesce catalog is for the business user who is coming in to start their day and kind of start doing analysis on these objects themselves.
Awesome. Thanks for showing that to us.
Yeah, thanks,
Okay.
Angela.
Does anyone here in the group have any questions before I start mine?
Oh, yeah. Good, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, sure thing. So you were showing that environments and promoting to different environments. How does the product deal with organizations, NPE, like accounts, non-production accounts versus production accounts, as
Yeah.
opposed to being in one, you know, sort of
Yeah.
homogeneous account?
Yeah, great question. So, you saw when I was in this workspace setting that I'm using my user credentials and I'm authenticated to my Snowflake account. Well, that paradigm also exists for the environment object. And so if I open up my QA environment here, you'll see that mine is hooked to the same Snowflake account. But if you have a different account, you just paste that in here, and you'd probably authenticate differently than I'm doing here. Maybe it's a service user who's promoting this content, but you would just input all of your authentication information to the environment object here.
Okay, it's not getting it from the metadata in Snowflake, like off the organization and saying, hey, these are all the environments we have. You're building
Correct.
this individually. Is there a way to script that into this?
It's a good question. Not that I know of off the top. However, all of the deploy mechanisms are scriptable, you know, from DevOps practices. Maybe somebody's using GitHub Actions or something like that.
Mhm.
If you were to loop through all of your different Snowflake accounts, that could be possible. Yeah.
Got it. Hey, great. Thank you.
A quick
Yeah, great
question
question.
following on to kind of to what Newell was just asking you was, it's possible, right, to go over into Git and tweak
Mhm.
a data type or something like that. And the next time you launch that workspace, it will go pick up that modification you made in it directly in a YAML file in Git.
It is, although it's technically unsupported just because,
Okay.
you know, we kind of want the tool to be writing and only interacting with the Git repo there. But yes, it is possible. And I've used that type of scenario for restoring a Git, excuse me, restoring a Git repo and then restoring someone else's work into a workspace.
And it might
So,
not be oh, go ahead. Sorry.
oh,
I was gonna
that's all.
Sorry, so I was going to say, so it might not be recommended because there could be other settings or related things that get modified along with that tweak that you make. Is that kind of the
Correct.
idea? Okay.
Correct.
Uh, Anyone else? Go ahead and go off mic and ask your question. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and step into my questions. Um, let's see. Um, you can't, it only propagates the addition or deletion of a column, right? So it won't propagate a data type change across the nodes,
It,
right? If you,
yeah, it would if, I mean, depending on what I had put here, then yes, it
oh,
will propagate that as well.
so what if it was, you
Let's
just went
see.
into an existing column and changed a data type because the propagate
Mhm.
is on add or delete.
Oh, sure. So if I were
Yeah,
to go here and maybe I called this a varchar, you know,
to number or
40 or
something.
something.
Or
Yeah,
yeah,
I think that it will propagate this, but it may want to copy it in this lineage here. So let's see if I want to,
yeah, you know what I mean?
yeah, maybe I want to delete this and then I'm going to propagate the addition
Oh,
again.
that's an interesting thought.
Yeah, so then I would want to do this. And let's see if it shows up on there as a
Yeah,
varchar 40 or
yeah,
if
on
it's
the
a string
view.
still.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we'll go here, here. Oh, it looks like it did take the
nice.
data type. So
Oh,
yeah.
nice. Okay, thank you for that.
Hmm.
Let's see. The next one. Um, there is well, I think I know the answer, but maybe you can give me a little bit of thought process about it because you really kind of can't change a node type. I know you can go into those options and change like a table to a view in that staging one,
Hmm.
but you
Yeah.
it is the thinking around that that's really not recommended to do that. Like if you go,
Um, I think that folks will do this, especially en masse, right? If you're trying to change a whole bunch of, say
mm,
that I had created all of these as views, right? And I wanted to make them materialized as tables. I might view this as like a node grid instead then. So I would switch this from
yeah,
this graph view to the node grid. I
uh-huh.
would say, give me all of these that are,
Like
maybe
sort by node
these.
type.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And then I wanted to change that node. So I could open them up and do that here.
yeah,
I think that I could do that. I don't know if I can do this bulk edit nodes. Oh, it looks like you can do this as well. So
node type.
bulk edit node type or storage location. Yeah.
Yeah. When you go into one of those stage nodes and go look at
Hmm.
expand the options,
Sure.
see the create as, it'll do a table or
Hmm.
a view in there.
Yeah.
Um, and is that available to do that? Or
Hmm.
have you ever worked much with that? Because one of the things we found is if we go back and forth between that, it's not as happy about, well, let me put it this way, and this does make sense, is that if you do that, let's say if you got a view and you want to land it, okay, let's make it to a table, um,
Hmm.
then you have to manually go out and delete it as a table because if it
Yeah.
or as a view because it won't create or replace and overwrite the type of
Sure.
object. So um, I get that part of it. But as long as you go
Hmm.
like delete that view and swap this over to be a table, if it's that way, um, can you think of any
Yeah.
do's or don'ts about that?
I think that the main thing there is that the naming conventions are clashing at that point, and that's what it's probably angry
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Um,
In the metadata, though, it should
right.
be,
There is an edit node API, so I don't know if that would change all of those en masse, but I still
uh
think you would have to go and drop whatever object is already there with the same
yeah.
naming convention. So
And once you
if
did
we were
that, it
changing
should
all
be,
these,
yeah. And once you
yeah,
did that, it should be fine. There isn't anything else going on in the metadata that needs to,
that's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you. Let's
Hmm.
see. My next one is one of the other things that you can do, and I don't know if it's, let's see, in the node type, there's an override SQL.
Hmm. I think you're
Um,
thinking of a view.
oh, okay.
So maybe
Options.
this one here.
Yeah, override create SQL. And so when you
Yeah.
click that, one of the
Hmm.
things that we've noticed is once you go type your query in there, um, like let's say we want to, rename some aliases, do a join, remove some tables, do a group by, and something custom in here. We noticed that, and you may not have had this experience yet, but we've noticed that it loses some of the lineage capabilities.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
Yeah, the override create SQL I think is like kind of a break glass in case of emergency kind of thing that
okay.
I would use. So I tend towards when I have a big SQL statement, I want to break it down into modular parts. And even with the Copilot, it could be useful for, hey,
Oh,
break this query into, all these building blocks that, have that lineage component. I find that the lineage can be finicky, especially if you are using aliases um, here to reference previous nodes. And I've tested that before with, um, yeah, just that aliases
yeah.
can be funky and break that
Okay.
lineage component.
Okay. Okay. That even just that information helps. I'll
Hmm.
go check if that's a pattern about why that's happening for us.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, let's see. Um, oh, is there anything that can exist in the workspace that's not in the branch about the nodes?
Is there anything that can exist in the workspace that's not in the branch? Um,
I've noticed we have to kind of do like if we want to swap branches on that workspace, we have to kind of do like a force checkout on that
uh-huh.
branch so that it gets rid of anything else that might be non-compatible with what you're wanting to bring in and work with.
Hmm.
And sometimes there'll be like a deleted node um,
Yeah, yeah.
that's sitting there that even though you switch to the branch, you kind of have to force check it out so it'll clear out any of your previous.
Yeah, I think that oftentimes people will resolve merge conflicts right here. If you're using this merge latest functionality,
Yeah.
but I'm not positive on how your workspace would get into that state where it's like automatically deleting those components
Oh,
or where you need to force checkout.
okay. Well, thank you very much. I'll go ahead and stop the recording now. And we look forward to all kinds of great things coming up from Coalesce, unless you know of any other roadmap features you'd like to share with us.
Um, there is some exciting stuff on the infrastructure side that, is probably a couple quarters out,
Mhm.
but really just being able to containerize the platform itself and run solely on the Azure or AWS or GCP platforms. Um, that's really nice. And then um, I think that the Copilot is just going through iterations and development, and
Mhm.
it's only going to get better from here. But from I think that usually this is really stemming from the migration story, and that people who have
Yeah,
tried something, and if it's not working and they want to try something new, the Copilot is going to be a really great way for people to get started with Coalesce.
super. Well, thanks for your time. Okay, I'm
Thank
gonna
you. Thanks, Angela.